Today we have a very special removal. A cool lady named Barb called us. She lives in North Central Austin and she has a beehive in her backyard and they're causing a little bit of problems for her. She has a sacred space back there, a little garden oasis. It almost feels like you're kind of in the tropics and you kind of weave your way through the garden to get back to where the bees are. And the cool thing about these bees is that they are in a Virgin Mary statue. And those bees have been there for about 7 years, and there's even backstory about where those bees came from. The bees were actually living in a tree that died before they moved into the Virgin Mary statue. And now that they're in the Virgin Mary statue, it's Barb's sacred space, which I think the bees agree with Barb, but they've become a little testy, and so Barb can't enjoy that sacred space anymore without getting stung. So we're gonna go ahead and rehome these bees, and I'm really excited to share this with you.
When doing these removals, we have to sort of come up with a game plan because each one is so different and how we're going to approach it. On this one, we were told by the homeowner, Barb, that this statue is actually hollow inside and that we could go in from the bottom, the base of the statue. So we decided that the first thing we would do is actually tip the statue over carefully because we wanted to preserve the statue for the homeowner, and that we would go in to get the comb and the bees from underneath because it was a wider opening, even though the bees were going in and out on the top of the head of the Virgin Mary. So when we went to do that, we were like, we couldn't tip it over. And the reason we couldn't tip over the statue was because it was buried about 6 or more inches deep into the dirt. And it wasn't originally like that. I think she had actually gotten the statue about 25 years ago from a friend who was dear to her who passed away. As the statue had just sat there over the years, it sunk into the dirt. And so we had to dig out all of the dirt surrounding the statue in order to even tip the statue over, which is what we did. So that took a little bit of time. When we actually ended up tipping over the statue, what was really cool and what the bees had done, because there was dirt below all of their comb and they wanted to keep it clean and sanitary in there, they had propolized the entire ground in that area. So there was propolis all over the dirt. So when we lifted up the statue underneath had this layer of propolis and dirt. So it looked like dirt, and as it just kind of would flake away, you could see it was all held together by the bees' propolis. And propolis is an amazing thing that the bees use. They use it to seal up their hives. It is their immune system. It's for sanitary reasons that they use it, but a lot of people call it bee glue. Once we were able to sort of get that layer of propolis and soil away from the comb, then we were able to see into the hive and get a better idea and understanding of what was in there. It was completely packed with comb, and that comb was so dark. And so the darker the comb is, the older it is, and it gets kind of hard almost, which is a little bit easier to handle than new comb, which is very soft and just kind of like falls apart. So, but the challenge was trying to just get the comb out because it was such a long and tapered space, because at the bottom it was wide and open, but as you went up the statue, it was very tapered. And so we were able to kind of cut out the first pieces of comb, and that allowed us more space. As we were removing the comb from the statue, we put it on frames with rubber bands to hold it in place so that the bees have their brood and other resources that they have in the hive. We try to keep that together for them as much as possible, so when they move into their new home, they have as much as the hive intact as possible. It can be really hard to do that with honey, because honey, once it's been cut, the comb, it just starts dripping, and honey actually will drown the bees. As we work, we make sure that the bees have as much comb as possible, especially their brood comb. And one of the first things I remember seeing when we started removing comb was that there were several queen cells at the bottom, which is kind of like swarm cells. It's an indication that the bees have either swarmed or they're going to swarm. And I think that those queen cells were already used, so they were open cells. So we had a new queen in that hive. And We didn't actually get to catch the queen in this removal, which is what we prefer to do because it's easier to get the bees to move into their new home. But as we were getting them to come out of the statue, I did see the queen make an appearance. I just wasn't able to grab her because she darted right back in to the statue. They don't make it easy on us all the time. So sometimes we have some challenges that we have to work through in order to get the bees to do what we want them to do. We were able to leave the box in the place of the statue, hoping that the bees would eventually all come home and come back into their space so that Barb would be completely free of the bees, and they would move into their new home. The other thing is that when we did remove the bees and the comb from the statue, because there was honey in there was so much leftover honey kind of just in the statue itself. It's just the nature of the beast. When you're cutting out comb, the honey is going to drip and go kind of everywhere. So we left that there so that the bees could clean it all off and rob it out. And they will do that. The bees will clean up the honey mess and they'll put it in stores in the new hive. So they were able to clean off the statue and make sure that they had what they needed. And we, because Barb wanted to preserve that statue and keep it in her sacred space, which is where she enjoyed spending her evenings, we suggested that she fill in the entire statue. So whatever, something of substance that the bees can't move in there. So because once bees move into a place, they leave behind so much scent. And even though we get out all the comb, there are still remnants of wax. There's still remnants of propolis and honey. That smell is so attractive to the bees. And when there is a swarm out there and they send out scout bees, they are very interested in inhabiting the spaces that smell like bee. The cool thing about this removal is that the homeowner, Barb, was very interested in the whole process and actually stayed with us. We let her borrow a bee suit, and she stayed with us and watched the whole process unfold, even though it was so very hot that day. And not only was it hot, but it was so oppressively humid that we were sweating so much. Once I took off my bee suit, all of my clothes were completely saturated, like I had been drenched by a hose. And we had to keep taking breaks just for our own safety and sanity to replenish our fluids and eventually eat, because it ended up taking a lot longer than we anticipated.
Our main goal when doing bee removals is to preserve the bees and give them a safe space, as well as give the humans a safe place so that they can feel comfortable in their own environment. We always enjoy doing these bee removals, and we look forward to the next one, and we hope to see you there.